What's going on, everyone? So, Victor Oladipo is returning to the Houston Rockets after being part of the Kevin Porter Jr. trade. Oklahoma City is going to waive Kevin Porter Jr. immediately, and the Houston Rockets could very well keep Victor Oladipo, right? He's a guy that kind of fits with what the Houston Rockets are trying to do right now, interject some veteran and some veteran leadership along with some of their young guys, some of their young core. You know, we saw them go and get Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, bringing in Reggie Bullock. They also got into Jeff Green. So that is definitely a possibility as far as Houston goes. But there are kind of reports leaning towards Houston, very likely maybe looking to trade Victor, or they want to end up waiving him. There are talks about the Houston Rockets looking to go get like a Malcolm Brogdon, and Alec Burke, a couple guys, again, in the veteran mold of things. And also, what does Victor want? Because Houston, right, they may be a pretty solid team, right, this season. They may make a little bit of noise, but they're not going to be a contending team, right? No one's expecting the Houston Rockets to be there competing for an NBA championship this year. And Victor Oladipo, he very likely wants to be in a position to where he can contend for an NBA championship. And he's still a solid player. Obviously, he's been dealing with a lot of injuries. He's not the same guy he once was, but he has shown those bursts the last few years and has shown the ability to still kind of turn it on at times, especially if he's in a smaller role. Right, even last season, he gave you just under 11 points, 3 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Now, he did only play 42 games. He hasn't played much basketball in the last few years. He's only played a total of like 75 games, I think, in the last like 2-3 years, which, again, isn't great by any standards. But I think if he's in a position with the proper team where they don't need him to play heavy minutes, they just kind of either need him as like a veteran guy, which does make sense for the Houston Rockets, or a team that just wants him in small doses, right? So even last year in the 42 games he played, he averaged 26 minutes for the Miami Heat, right? I don't think he's that guy anymore, but I do think like if you cut that in half, let's say, then that could be a real factor where he could benefit said team. Now, there are plenty of teams that I think would maybe take a flyer on him if he was waived and maybe bring him in, again, just as kind of that veteran guy. And like Miami obviously makes a lot of sense. He spent the last 3 years, I believe, with the Miami Heat, and so they're kind of familiar with him. He's kind of familiar with them, and it was a bit of a surprise that he left Miami. And it's kind of funny that like now it's kind of he could end up back there, right? It's like it's not always the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but there is also the Lakers, right? So like out of all the positions that the Lakers could fill, right? One, I really like the idea of a veteran guy. And he's only 31, so he's not like a super veteran. But he is a guy that I think could be very beneficial for some of our younger guys, some of our younger guards. He is, when he is capable of being on the basketball court, a legit two-way shooting guard, right? He's not like the most efficient three-point shooter. At least last year, he shot 33%. But in 2021, 2022, he did shoot just shy of 42% on 4.5 attempts. But again, he played like 8 games that year. And then, if you kind of go down the list, he's had some good years and then like bad years kind of mixed in. Like he's had years where he shot like 37%. So he had like a 2-year stint where he shot 36 and 37%, 1 year with Oklahoma City, 1 year with the Indiana Pacers. And then, like I said, he had in 2020, 2021, before he went to Houston, he shot 36.2% on 7.7 attempts. And then back in Houston, 32% on 7.7 attempts. So that drop-off was just really strange. But maybe it's just a new team, new environment, where, again, I like if the Lakers were to bring him on, my guess is it would just be on kind of like a flyer, low risk, high reward, vet minimum type deal, and just kind of be a mentor that can play in spots. Now, obviously, you have Max Christie, you have Cam Reddish, two guys that very likely could fill in at the 2 guard spot. You also have what Darvin Ham has even experimented with is Taurean Prince playing the 2 guard. So that could be a real possibility as well, right? The Lakers aren't desperate at the guard spot, but it wouldn't hurt to have somebody else. And Victor is also a guy that can make some plays, right? I mean, he's not like a point guard by any stretch, but this is a guy that averages 4 assists for his career. He's even had years where he's averaged 5 assists per game. So he's just another guy that has kind of played the point guard, shooting guard position. I mean, even the first year he was drafted, when he was drafted by Orlando, he played the point guard position primarily. And 80 games total, 44 games as the starting point guard. So he is capable and familiar with that role to at least an extent, right? He wouldn't be starting or anything like that. But it's just kind of like bringing that guard in that could kind of play in spots, give you some solid minutes when he does play, give you some solid production, give an Austin Reeves or a D'Lo or a Gabe Vincent a night off, right? And Victor can kind of step in and play that role. Like, I wouldn't be looking at him as like, oh, this is a guy that changes the tides, right? Like, I think he has the potential to impact the game in the playoffs, right? I do think he's a guy that, like, he could just catch fire in a game or whatever and really, make an impact. I mean, he's had good playoff runs, right? Even that one year in Indy in like 2017, again, this was pre-injury, but he averaged like 22 then, 17 the following year, and then the 2 years that he made it to the playoffs with Miami, he averaged basically 11 points per game on some pretty decent efficiency. Last year more so than previous years, but he also only, again, it's a smaller sample size. Last year only played 2 games, and then the year prior he played 15. And so if you look at like Miami 2021, 2022, where he played 15 games and he averaged 25 minutes, he struggled a bit, but it's not, again, it's something that we wouldn't be asking him to play as big of a role, right? My concern is just him staying healthy on the basketball court. But to kind of bring him on as a flyer, I don't really hate it, right? And look, Cam Reddish and Max Christie have both shown great moments, right? Both guys have shown that, like, oh, they have some definite upside. They have some definite potential. They're two guys that, they're young. They're a bit raw at times, but they're two guys that you could easily play 10 to 15 minutes a game, and they're going to provide an impact, and they're going to play well, right? I think you could get that with Victor Oladipo, but you get somebody that can be kind of more of a stabilizer, right? Because it's not, Max Christie and Cam Reddish haven't looked so good that it's like, okay, yeah, these guys are clearly them, right? Do you kind of bring in Victor Oladipo on like a non-guaranteed as like a flyer, give him a little bit of an opportunity, and then, if it's not working out, just waive him, or if he gets injured or something like that, you just kind of waive him and you leave it open, right? Because, I mean, again, if he's healthy, he is a guy that can have an impact. Like, he's had some big games for Miami the last few years, but it's just, again, it's limited. He's also been very good defensively the last few years, right? So when he's healthy and locked in, he's healthy and locked in. I'm not like super sold on it, right? Like, it's one of those things where I feel like I wouldn't hate it if it happened, but it's not something that I would necessarily go out of the way to do. It's just kind of a thought of like, yes, he's not the guy he once was, but you don't need him to be. You just kind of need him to buy into his role, fit into his role, provide minutes here and there when he does play. I mean, you could even still lean heavily on Cam Reddish and Max Christie, and then just, again, play Victor Oladipo in spots, and just have him kind of be a guy that, comes in and plays and like the in-between games, again, like I said, D'Lo has the night off, or Austin Reeves has the night off, or whomever has the night off, and it's like, all right, well, let's throw out Victor. Like, Victor, we're calling your number tonight. Let's go out there, make it happen, and kind of just try to keep him as healthy as possible, because I do think he would be helpful come playoff time. The regular season, I don't really think he makes a factor, but come playoff time, he could give you some of that, like, just security and stability, right? Because, like, Cam Reddish, how does he look in the playoffs, right? Max Christie, how does he look in the playoffs? You're relying on two young guys that have kind of never been there or done that, like, may or may not deliver or could very well just kind of completely disappear, right? Like, even like Lonnie Walker, he had that game, which was huge. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to try to seem like I'm downplaying it by any stretch of the imagination. But, like, outside of that game, he kept getting minutes and basically did nothing beyond that. And he was, like, bad. And again, it's because of his inexperience, right? He hasn't really been there. He hasn't had to go through the struggles to build that consistency come playoff time. Victor Oladipo is a guy that you can rely on in the playoffs. It's like, the way I look at it is like, okay, let's say push came to shove, right? Victor Oladipo is healthy and can play. In a playoff game down the stretch, who would you trust more? Victor Oladipo or Max Christie and Cam Reddish? And again, I am super high on Max Christie and Cam Reddish, but I would trust Victor Oladipo more in that spot. Late in game, you need somebody out there, Austin Reeves fouled out or something like that, right? And it's like, well, now what do we do? Right? And it's like, okay, well, you got Max Christie, you got Cam Reddish. Let's make it happen, right? Like, okay, like, next man up mentality, but I would just feel so much more comfortable if it was a guy like a Victor Oladipo. And look, I understand the Lakers could use another center, and personally, like, my money is like they're not going to sign anybody. Right? I don't think that they're going to fill that 15th roster spot, at least until, like, either the buyout market or, like, around the trade deadline, or they do what they did, like, with Tristan Thompson, where they just signed him right at the end there. Maybe they do something like that, but I don't know. I don't hate the idea of bringing Victor on a flyer, just kind of seeing how it goes. If it doesn't go, you just waive them and, you clean up the spilt milk. Not a big deal. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? Would you bring him on? Give him a chance? Do you think no? He's, injury prone, washed up now at this point. However you feel, love to hear it. Let me know.